I think that these hearing aids are going to be incredibly difficult for you to get your hands on. Hey guys, Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and in this video, I'm doing a detailed review of the new Oticon Zeal hearing aids. So at this point, you've probably had a chance to check out my vlog video where I flew out to Oticon headquarters in Denmark to get an early sneak peek at this brand new type of hearing aid. Now, I'll admit, I went to Denmark very skeptical about all the things that this hearing aid could do, but I am happy to say that when I got done with my time in Denmark, I was totally sold. Essentially, the Oticon Zeal hearing aids can do pretty much everything that a receiver-in-canal hearing aid can do, only these devices go entirely inside of your ears with nothing behind your ear. I mean, it can be fit with a rubber dome, it can be fit with a custom ear mold that's rechargeable, it has wireless connectivity, it's extremely durable, and it has similar performance as a receiver-in-canal device. Now, it's hard to ignore the popularity of receiver-in-canal hearing aids over the past 10 to 15 years. I mean, they have completely dominated the market, primarily because they have all of the best features and they perform the best out of any other style of hearing aid typically. But this is the first time that I have ever truly felt that a different style of hearing aid could eventually dethrone the receiver-in-canal style from its position of popularity. And soon you'll find out why. But before I get into my detailed review, do me a huge favor, click the like button, really helps out the channel. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on, go ahead and do that as well, it's greatly appreciated. And let me know down in the comments section, assuming that everything was identical in terms of performance, would you prefer to use a hearing aid that goes entirely inside of your ears or one that has to go behind your ears? Now remember, it does not matter how awesome any hearing aid is, including the Oticon Zeal, unless you've had it fit and programmed by a hearing care professional who follows comprehensive audiologic best practices. And the best way to find one of these extremely rare providers that follows best practices is to go to my website, hearingup.com, and finding a Hearing Up Network member in your area. Hearing Up members have been vetted and are committed to following comprehensive audiologic best practices to ensure that you receive the maximum amount of benefit from your hearing aids. So if you want your Oticon Zeal hearing aids to help you hear your absolute best, then finding a Hearing Up Network member in your area is your best bet. The Oticon Zeal is an instant fit, completely in the canal sized hearing aid that Oticon placed in their new NXT CICR category of devices. At its initial release, the Oticon Zeal is only available in one technology level, which I actually like because I don't like the idea of defeaturing hearing aids by dropping down in technology levels, but I do expect Oticon to have different tiers of these technologies as time goes on. The Zeal uses the same Sirius chip that Oticon uses inside of their extremely popular Intent receiver-in-canal hearing aids, which means that the Zeal actually uses the same second generation deep neural network for artificial intelligence sound processing to better separate out speech from background noise. And since the Oticon Intent hearing aids have been some of the most popular hearing aids over the past 2 years, this is a huge plus for the Oticon Zeal. As per usual, the cost of your Oticon Zeals will depend on a variety of different factors, including where you live, what services are included with your hearing aid purchase, and what the quality of those services are. Heck, device scarcity might even play into hearing aid pricing here as well, because these hearing aids are going to be difficult to find. I will say that after you watch this review video, if you are inclined to want to try these hearing aids, you had better call your hearing care professional and get on a wait list. These will not be available inside the United States until January 2026, and there are already a ton of people on a waiting list inside of my clinic. Now, the Zeal comes in any color that you want, as long as that color is black, because black is the best color if you want these to be discreet inside of your ear canals. Now, I have to say, the build quality of these has to be the first thing that I notice. I mean, the way that these hearing aids are designed are impeccable. These are not like little cheap OTC devices that you typically see online, and these are even higher quality in my opinion than a lot of custom prescription hearing aids that you can purchase. Now, I do want to point out a couple of different things on this device. So you may notice that there's this pretty big looking antenna thing on the back here. That is an antenna. It is also a removal string, and it is also a retention filament. It serves all three of those purposes. One fun fact here is that this antenna is the only thing that can actually be removed and replaced if it becomes damaged on this hearing aid. And the reason why will become apparent to you here in a few minutes. Now, I should point out that the receiver tips on these hearing aids are color-coded to make sure that you put them in the correct ears. Let me see if I can get those up on camera. Red is for right and blue is for left. They still use the mini-fit wax traps in the tips of these receivers, just like you have on the Intent receiver-in-canal hearing aids. Now, they do have exposed battery contacts, which means that they do use contact charging. You can see the little gold plates right there. They do use contact charging instead of inductive charging. They have a single microphone port on the back of the hearing aid there. And they do have an LED light on the body of the hearing aids. Let me go ahead and reset that for you so I can show you what that looks like. There we go. When you put it in the charger, it shows that it's charging. When it's fully charged, it's solid green, and then when it's turning on, you see the green light there as well, and then that green light will eventually go dark as you have it inside of your ear. Now, perhaps my favorite part of the design of these hearing aids, other than the ergonomic shape that just happens to fit an ear canal really, really well, is the fact that you can use a rubber dome like this one that you see here, or you can use a custom ear mold on the end of it like you see here. Now, which one you need will depend on the configuration of your hearing loss and the size and shape of your ear canals, because the acoustics can be different for everybody. The Zeal has 75 decibel receivers, which means that the majority of your hearing loss thresholds on your audiogram need to be 75 decibels or less that fall within this range. If you have a mild to moderate hearing loss, you'll typically be able to get away with using either an open dome, an open bass dome, or a double vented bass dome. And this is why they call it an instant fit hearing aid, because just like a receiver-in-canal hearing aid, you can pop a dome on it, do the programming literally right then and there without having to wait for any custom components if you don't need them. However, if you have more than a mild to moderate level hearing loss, you're likely going to have to go with one of the micromold custom ear mold tips on the end of it. They have ones that are made out of silicone, so it's a little bit softer of a material here, and then they have the ones that are made out of acrylic that you can see right here. Now, my preference is for the ones that are actually made out of silicone, because those do sit a little bit deeper inside of your ear canals, which is largely the point of wanting to use these hearing aids. I'll go ahead and show you what they look like inside of my ears here in just a second. First, I want to show you what it looks like when you're going to be using a rubber dome on the tip of this hearing aid. So I'm going to use this inside of my left ear, so you can get a perspective of what that looks like. He is inside of my ear. I've got the antenna wrapped in there, and you let me know what you can see of that hearing aid. I happen to feel that it's very comfortable inside of my ear, and it is not particularly visible. I can feel that antenna making contact with my ear, which is a good thing because that's aiding in the retention so this doesn't migrate out of my ear. And it's actually better to have more contact for better wireless audio transmission. All right, let me go ahead and show you the silicone micro mold here. So that's what this one looks like inside of my right ear. Now, I can tell that this does not go quite in as far into my ear canal compared to the rubber dome on my left ear. So you tell me, does that look like it's a little bit further out of my ear canal? I will say that I do get better hearing performance using the custom molded tip. Feel free to tell me which one of these is more discreet inside of my ears. I have the rubber dome on this side, and this one is the silicone mold. All right, now I'm gonna take out my right hearing aid here. I'm going to take off the silicone one, and I'm going to put on the acrylic one. I believe this is also going to sit even further out of my ear canal, to the point where I don't know if I would actually wear this, because you can see how this is now starting to come much further out of my ear canal right there. Hopefully you guys can see that on camera. Let me spin around to the rubber dome side. You can see how much further into my ear that actually sits. Now, in terms of performance though, it totally depends on which one you actually need to use, but if you're going to get similar performance between the acrylic and silicone ear molds, I would venture to say that going with the silicone ones that go further inside of your ear canals makes a lot more sense. Now, I'm going to be showing you the amplification differences of these different ear tips a little bit later in this video, because the differences are dramatic. Okay, now that you know what the Zeal hearing aids look like, let's go ahead and talk about some of the other features that you get with these hearing aids, starting with rechargeability. So the Zeal hearing aids themselves use lithium-ion batteries, and like I mentioned earlier, they do have contact charging. So let me just kind of show you the case here. You can see that indicator light is indicating that he is charging because the metal contacts have made contact there. Now, it is super easy to drop this into place because there is a magnet in there. Now, you might be able to see the contacts on this other side here. If I can get the lighting right inside of there, that lets you know where it has to make contact with. Now, you may notice that I do not have this case plugged into the wall. That's because it actually stores additional charges there. You can see we've got 3 full charges still available inside of this case, so you can charge these hearing aids on the go. I have to say that the lid is also really easy to close and open. It does use a magnet to kind of keep it shut, and it's a very light magnet, so it's easy to open if you have finger dexterity issues. Now, it only takes 2 hours to take your Zeal hearing aids from no charge up to a full charge, and that will get you 20 hours of battery life, with 4 of those hours being spent streaming. When you put them inside the charger, they automatically turn off, and when you pull them out of the charger, they automatically turn on. Now, one thing that I do not like is that there is actually no way to turn this hearing aid off without putting it back in the charger. So if you're not going to be taking your home charger with you everywhere that you go, you might want to get a second charger to keep in your bag while you're out and about. Now, I really can't say enough about this antenna slash removal string slash retention filament that they have on the Zeal hearing aids. From a wireless perspective, though, I find them to be extremely effective. Now, the goal here is to have as much of that antenna touching your ear as possible. That actually improves the transmission of the device. And there you can see that has pretty good contact with my ear. If you can even see it there, I don't know. But really genius invention. Now, Starkey did do something like this several years ago. I just feel like Oticon has found a way to make that wire act and shape more like it should be. I have to say that the connection is really stable for me using these particular devices. From a wireless compatibility perspective, the Zeal hearing aids use the new Bluetooth LE audio protocol for Android devices, but they still use the old Bluetooth low energy protocol for Apple devices. With an Android phone, you can use Google's Fast Pair to quickly pair these devices up with your Android phone, so you can start streaming media immediately if you want to. You also have a couple other adjustments that you can do directly from your phone. However, you will also want to download the Oticon Companion app to use with the Zeal hearing aids. This is the same app that you use with the Oticon Intent hearing aids. Now, I do have a separate review video of the Oticon Companion app that you can check out as well if you'd like to. However, one new feature inside of the Oticon Companion app is the new Auracast activation feature. Now, just in case this is the first time that you're hearing me talk about Auracast, it is essentially a new form of broadcast audio made possible by this new form of Bluetooth LE audio. This allows you to stream audio from a public venue directly into your Oticon Zeal hearing aids, as long as the public venue has an Auracast transmitter. Just imagine going to a sports bar, a music venue, a museum, church, or even a Broadway show, and having the audio in that venue go directly into your Zeal hearing aids. Now, I actually tested this Auracast feature during my trip to Denmark, and it was amazing. In fact, it inspired me to order an Auracast transmitter for my clinic in Phoenix as well. And I'm probably even going to end up donating a bunch of Auracast transmitters to public venues across the greater Phoenix area to improve accessibility for individuals who want to use these hearing aids. This Auracast feature even allows you to tap into TV streamers from other hearing aid brands like Starkey and Resound if you want to stream audio directly from your TV into your ears as well. And pretty soon you're not even going to need to use those streaming devices, because a lot of new TVs that are going to eventually be coming out are going to have Auracast built into them as well, giving you direct access into your TV's audio. All right, so there's something that's really cool about Auracast and these Oticon Zeal hearing aids that I have to share with you. So as you know, the Oticon Zeal hearing aids are compatible with the Oticon Companion app, but you may also be aware that if you're an Apple iPhone user, iPhones do not yet have Bluetooth LE audio, which means that they are not yet compatible with Auracast broadcast audio. So if you want to be able to do Auracast with your Oticon hearing aids, you may not be able to, right? Well, wrong. Oticon has actually thought about that and actually created another video talking about this whole aspect of Auracast and how to use them with your hearing aids. But if you're an iPhone user, you can actually get access to Auracast inside of the Oticon Companion app, because Oticon thought of this. They know that if you have an iPhone that you weren't going to be able to use this Auracast broadcast signal. So how you actually activate this is you go into the Oticon Companion app. On the far right-hand side here, you have the little triple dot menu. You go into that, and then you can click on Auracast Broadcast. Once you tap on Auracast Broadcast, it basically is searching for broadcasts near you. Now, as you can see here, it has my Applied Hearing Solutions Auracast Broadcast available that we can tap into. So I'm going to go ahead and tap into that. It's going to ask for a password, and my password is super simple. It is 1111. Click OK. There we go. And now it is actually joining the broadcast, and there you go. You can see that we are actually inside of a broadcast right now. Now it doesn't let me screen record this as I'm streaming the broadcast, so I'll take a couple of screenshots for you while I'm doing this, but you can actually increase the volume of that broadcast into the Zeal hearing aids as well. And another really cool thing about having access to Auracast through the Oticon Companion app, in addition to it making any phone that you're using the Oticon Companion app basically compatible with Auracast broadcast audio directly into your Oticon hearing aids, but the Oticon Companion app also has a downsampling. And so what I mean by that is, so the Bluetooth Special Interest Group, they basically gave a recommendation to consumer electronics companies saying that we want you to use a 24,000 hertz sampling frequency. And so that way we can have compatibility with different wireless earbuds, hearing aids, headphones, what have you. But a lot of TV companies have decided to do 48,000 hertz. And 48,000 is not the same as 24,000. So what the Oticon Companion app will also do is it will do a downsampling. So it will take a 48,000 hertz signal and it will convert it over into a 24,000 hertz signal inside of the Oticon hearing aids. And so that actually gives you more compatibility with more devices using this Oticon Companion app that you do not have access to with other devices that are out there. So if you are not an Android user like I am and you're worried about not being able to use Auracast broadcast audio with your Zeal hearing aids or even your Intent hearing aids, you can do it if you use the Oticon Companion app to gain access to it. Of course, if you're talking about streaming sound quality, Bluetooth LE audio is going to have a better sound quality than the low energy Bluetooth that Apple uses. Of course, the streaming audio sound quality is going to heavily depend on whether or not you're using a custom mold on the tip of your Zeal hearing aid or an open dome, and whether or not your hearing care professional custom programs the audio really well when it comes to streaming. Speaking of programming, now is as good a time as any for me to review with you the capabilities of these devices when it comes to amplifying sound. All right, so this section is going to be a long one, but definitely the most important part of this review because it truly tells us the amplification capabilities of the Zeal hearing aids. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you're probably aware of the verification technique called real ear measurement. This is where we're able to measure how much amplification you're receiving from a pair of hearing aids to ensure that it is meeting your hearing loss prescription. This requires that we place probe microphone tubes inside of the ear canals along with the hearing aids so we can customize the amplification levels and match them to prescriptive targets. We perform these verification measures on my wife Ashley and myself with a high frequency normal sloping to moderate hearing loss in the right ear and a normal sloping to severe hearing loss in the left ear, which is at the upper limits of the candidacy range for the Zeal hearing aids. I also performed an additional verification measure inside of my ear canals for a flat, mild level hearing loss using both custom ear tips and vented rubber domes. For Ashley, the first thing I did is perform the feedback measure using vented domes. This is where the Zeal hearing aid plays an internally generated sound to see how much of that sound leaks out of the ear canal and recycles through the hearing aid microphone. This gives us our feedback margin in red and blue. The more red and blue shading that you see, the more leakage there is, and the higher the potential for feedback if we were to increase amplification levels into these ranges. Ideally, you want to see some space between these shaded regions and the initial amplification levels of a hearing aid, which are indicated by the solid red and blue curves. In Ashley's case, we likely have plenty of headroom to amplify sound using vented domes before running into any concerns of feedback. Next, we moved on to our first in-ear measure, which is ear canal resonance. This is the natural amplification effect that humans receive that is created by the pinna effect and the ear canal funneling sound and peaking it around 2700 hertz. Anywhere the solid pink curve is above the solid black curve indicates Ashley's ear canal resonance. The hash mark pink curve is Ashley's prescription for the normal to moderate hearing loss in her right ear and normal to severe hearing loss in her left ear. Next, I wanted to see if the Oticon Zeal hearing aids created any insertion loss, which is a plugging effect that is caused by a hearing aid if it blocks off natural sound from entering the ear canal. If the purple curve is below the solid black curve, then it means that the hearing aid, when it's turned off or on mute, blocks the ear canal and acts like an earplug. This makes it quite apparent that the Zeal, at least in Ashley's small ear canals using vented domes, that it does create a good amount of insertion loss. Fortunately, Ashley did not perceive any occlusion effect while wearing these hearing aids, which is a boomy, loud sound that you get when talking with your ears being plugged. Next, we needed to turn on the hearing aids and measure the manufacturer's first fit amplification levels based on the audiogram that we entered into the software. Ideally, what we want to see with this measurement is the solid red curves, which are amplification levels of the hearing aids, overlapping with the red hash mark curves, which are the prescriptive targets for these two high-frequency hearing loss configurations. Anywhere the solid curves are above the hash mark curves, Ashley is being over-amplified. Anywhere the solid curves are below the hash mark curves, she's being under-amplified. What we can easily see is that Ashley is receiving too much amplification in the low-frequency ranges below 700 Hz in both ears, and she's receiving far too little amplification in the high-frequency ranges above 3000 Hz in her right ear and 1500 Hz in her left ear. This is exactly why you should always have real ear measurement performed on your hearing aids, and I'm not just talking the Zeal hearing aids. If the amplification levels do not hit these high frequency prescriptive targets, Ashley will continue not hearing the high frequency consonant speech sounds which provide clarity to speech. And not only does this mean that she will not achieve a high level of speech intelligibility, but she will also perform very poorly in background noise, since the human brain uses a lot of these high-frequency speech sounds to separate speech from low-frequency background noise. To add insult to injury, if she's over-amplified in the low-frequency ranges like she is on the first fit settings, it will create a phenomenon called upward spread of masking, which will drown out the clarity that she would have gotten from the high frequencies, making things louder, but still not clear. This is why we need to make some custom programming adjustments in the Oticon software to increase the high frequencies from the Zeal hearing aids and decrease the low frequencies so we can match these prescriptive targets more precisely. After several rounds of adjusting the amplification levels, we were able to achieve a much better prescriptive target match, which is now indicated by the solid green amplification curves tracing the green hashmark prescription curves. For comparison's sake, you can see how poorly the manufacturer first fit settings were in red and how good they are now in green after custom programming using real ear measurement. Not bad for 8mm vented rubber domes inside of Ashley's ears, if you ask me. Now, these measures were for average level speech. We also needed to separately verify and adjust the amplification levels for loud level speech and soft level speech, which we call compression. First, we adjusted the amplification levels for loud level speech in red, and we were able to achieve a very good prescriptive match as well. This will ensure optimal speech intelligibility in loud, noisy environments. The same was true for soft level speech in turquoise. Here we started to see a little bit of roll off in the high frequencies of the left ear, which is on the right hand side of your screen, that caused us to miss some of the high frequency targets above 5000 Hz. But this was a good prescriptive match nonetheless. This will ensure good speech intelligibility of female voices and soft talkers. We also measured the maximum power output limits of the Zeal hearing aids in the solid pink curves to ensure that we did not exceed Ashley's uncomfortable levels, which are indicated by the pink hash mark curves. We also made sure that we had enough headroom between the maximum power output limit and the loud level speech envelope to prevent issues limiting access to loud level speech in noisy environments, which would ultimately destroy your performance. Once we were completely finished verifying the programming adjustments, this is what we ended up with. I was super impressed to see that we were able to hit Ashley's prescriptive targets using 8mm vented rubber domes without exceeding her feedback thresholds, even for a hearing loss in the high frequencies in the left ear that was at 75 decibels. Next, we took the exact same hearing losses and measured the amplification capabilities of the Zeal hearing aids inside of my ears. Just so you know, my ear canals are bigger with larger ear canal volumes than Ashley's ears, which means that it will likely be harder for me to hit my prescriptive targets. To start, we had to perform a new feedback measure using a custom ear tip on the left Zeal hearing aid due to the severe high frequency hearing loss, while maintaining a vented dome in the right ear for the moderate level hearing loss. As you can see by the large feedback margins indicated by the shaded red and blue regions, my ears leak a lot of amplified sound, way more than Ashley's ears, which ultimately resulted in significantly less headroom to increase amplification before the risk of feedback. But I'm not a quitter, so I pushed on to see if I could hit the same exact prescriptive targets using the Zeal hearing aids inside of my ears. In purple, you'll see the manufacturer first fit programming attempt. Very similar to Ashley's first fit, we were nowhere close to the high frequency prescriptive targets, which are arguably the most important targets to hit. We were even under amplified in some of the low frequency ranges of the left ear and over amplified in some of the mid frequency ranges of the right ear. Clearly we had to crank up the high frequencies, but notice that this resulted in the amplification curves entering the feedback margin, turning certain frequency ranges dark red and dark blue, letting us know that I was at significant risk for feedback issues if we left the amplification levels this high. Of course, if I was willing to risk my Zeal hearing aids whistling from time to time, you can see that we were able to match my prescriptive targets much better than we did on first fit setting. Next, we had to dial in the loud level speech amplification, which we were able to do. Then we had to try and match soft level speech targets, which do require more amplification, therefore a higher risk of feedback, but we were able to reasonably match these prescriptive targets, despite not being able to fully hit targets above 4,000 Hz even when using a custom ear tip in the left ear. Overall, this is how well we were able to match the same prescriptive targets that we had for Ashley using the Zeal hearing aid. Not bad if you ask me, but I would be a little worried that I would have significant issues with feedback for this moderate and severe level high frequency hearing loss, even when using a custom ear tip that is designed to prevent this feedback from occurring. So if moderate to high frequency hearing losses would be difficult for the Zeal hearing aids in my ears, what about a mild flat hearing loss like this one? This gives us some easier prescriptive targets to hit because we do not have to worry about amplifying the high frequencies as much, which would lead to more feedback potential, but also requires us to amplify the low frequencies to prescription. Switching to custom molded ear tips in both of my ears and rerunning the feedback manager, we can see that I had plenty of headroom to amplify sound before entering the feedback margin. And for the sake of saving time, here are my prescriptive target matches for average, loud, and soft level speech for this mild flat level hearing loss, followed by the programming that was required to achieve these targets that show that we did not have to exceed the feedback margin to hit them. But I also wanted to see what would happen if we tried to hit the same prescriptive targets using vented domes instead of my custom molded ear tips. Immediately we can see that the feedback margins got a lot bigger, which would limit how much amplification we could get before the potential of feedback. As you can see, I was still able to meet my mild level prescriptive targets for average, loud, and soft level speech inputs, except for a few gaps in the low frequency. However, in order to do so, it did require that we push the amplification levels into the feedback margin, which yes, does put me at risk for feedback again. The point here is that candidacy for the Oticon Zeal hearing aids is not 100% predictable based on your audiogram alone. Variables such as ear canal size and shape, as well as whether you need custom ear molds or rubber domes, can significantly impact your overall performance with the Zeal devices. And this is exactly why verification with real ear measurement should be a 100% non-negotiable when getting the Zeal hearing aids or any other hearing aids for that matter. So as you can see, whether the Zeal hearing aids will actually work for you heavily depends on your level of hearing loss and your ear canal size and shape, combined with the type of tip that you use on the ends of these devices. I still have to say that I believe feedback is going to be the biggest limiter for a lot of people using these Zeal hearing aids compared to a receiver-in-canal style hearing aid like the Oticon Intent, where you can typically increase amplification more before you run into any whistling issues. With that said, for being an instant fit CIC style hearing aid, the Oticon Zeal performs very similar to a receiver-in-canal style hearing aid without sacrificing really any of the features. I mean, the Zeal even has a motion sensor, so if you get a phone call coming in, all you gotta do is double tap your ear to answer the phone call. And I have no idea how they fit all of that stuff inside of a device that is literally this small. Still blows my mind. But the reason why Oticon was able to get these hearing aids so small with still having all of these great features is their new encapsulation technique. Traditionally, hearing aid manufacturers will build a shell for their hearing aid and then they'll try to figure out a way to jam all the components inside of that shell. Instead, Oticon took a different approach. They decided to build all the internal components first to maximize how they're positioned around each other, and then they decided to pour the outer shell around those internal components. If you saw my Zeal preview video, you know how I compared this technique to a mosquito trapped inside of tree sap and being preserved in amber for millions of years until scientists figured out a way to use the preserved dinosaur blood DNA inside of the mosquito to bring dinosaurs back to life. And if I'm being honest, this is not a whole lot different from what Oticon is doing. I mean, this makes this hearing aid incredibly small and incredibly durable. The Zeal hearing aid actually has an IP68 rating, which is the highest rating for debris and moisture resistance that a hearing aid can get. And really the only drawback to this is that, like I mentioned earlier, the only thing that you can actually replace is that antenna that's on there. If anything else malfunctions inside of this hearing aid, it has to go back to Oticon for them to repair or replace and get sent back to your hearing care professional. Now, that doesn't mean that you should not have professional maintenance done on these devices at your hearing care professional's office, as well as dehydration of these devices to make sure that nothing is going to cause these hearing aids to malfunction. If I had to bet, the biggest issue that we'll actually see with these hearing aids is these exposed battery contacts right here. If you get a bunch of earwax caking over the ends of those contacts right there, when you put these hearing aids back inside the charger, they're not going to make good contact. And eventually, over time, that debris is going to work its way onto the contacts inside of the charger, so you have to make sure that you maintain these devices extremely well, which means that you're probably taking an alcohol wipe periodically and wiping off these gold contacts inside the charger, as well as the gold contacts on the body of the hearing aids. But overall, I view the Zeal hearing aids is kind of like the little brother to the Oticon Intent Receiver-In-Canal hearing aids. I mean, I've been using these hearing aids for over a week now, and my performance is very similar to what I get with an Oticon Intent, and I can do pretty much all the same stuff. Now, if you happen to have hearing loss thresholds that are worse than 75 decibels, chances are you're not going to be a great candidate for this hearing aid, but you never know, it might be worth a try anyway. Because after all, if you have smaller ear canals, you can typically get more amplification out of a device, but if you have bigger ear canals, you might not even be able to use these if you have 65 decibel thresholds. Now, I really can't stress this enough. I am incredibly impressed with the performance capabilities of these devices, and having them so small, be able to go inside the ear canal entirely without really having to sacrifice any features. I mean, they hit the big four. They're rechargeable, they're discreet, they're wireless, and they have very similar performance to a Receiver-In-Canal device. But I want to know what you think. Do you think that the Oticon Zeal hearing aids check all the boxes when it comes to hearing aids that you would want to use, or do you still feel like a Receiver-In-Canal hearing aid is better for you? Let me know down in the comment section.